Good morning, Zimbabwe, and welcome to Zimbabwe Daily. My name is Yvonne Muchaka. We hope I find all of you well. Welcome to our program today, where we are just doing a post-mortem of the Ugandan election. And in the studio to help me unpack it, please allow my guests to introduce themselves. So, Dr. Arcero, please introduce yourself to the viewers.
Yeah, my name is Alex Rosero, a political analyst now based in Mutare, Manicaland.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I also have Mr. Shambare. Please introduce yourself, Mr. Shambare. Mr. Shambare, please introduce yourself. Okay, I think we have a problem there.
I think there's a problem with
hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we can hear you now. Okay, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Dev Shambare. I'm a former trade unionist. I'm a political analyst and a labor and business analyst as well. It's really my pleasure meeting you, Doctor, and the other panelists that I'm here to know. Thank you for bringing us together.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I think the happenings in Uganda have been under a lot of spotlight this week with the election that was held and the subsequent announcement by the Ugandan Electoral Commission that Yoweri Museveni is the president of Uganda, and the placement of one of the presidential candidates, Bobby Wine, under house arrest. So in order for us to just understand what was happening and what took place there, I will allow Dr. Rosero, being a political analyst, to give us what have you observed from the Ugandan election.
Yeah, there are hiccups to your mic, Yvonne, but I think you can hear me, and I guess I have heard what you want me to do in the shortest period of time. That is reflecting on what has taken place in Uganda vis-a-vis the way forward, which way Africa, which way the Ugandans, in as much as charting the way forward is concerned.
Right.
I think we have to agree that having elections in Africa is one thing. Espousing to the dictates of democracy is another. We have reached a point where more oftenly you now have elections as a ritual. We have a practice of voting without choosing. People are allowed to vote, but they are not allowed to choose. So in the process, this is giving birth to what is called choiceless democracy, where this is a pseudo-democracy, a posture to the world that we are doing elections. And the incumbent is retained because he's still popular with the planet. But unfortunately, what we have seen in Uganda, that's a sham election which should be condemned, which deserves the greatest contempt in as much as conducting an election is concerned. It's an election that was held at the backdrop of blood after the military unleashed live bullets to people, killing instantly at one goal up to 50 people. So you wouldn't be a proud president ascending to the throne, walking towards the state house over dead bodies. But unfortunately, that is the current scenario, that is the current predicament in Uganda right now, where you have a whole leader who came to power in 1986 and this is now 35 years after he's seeking another term of office. At times, it's not much about what the vote is saying, but common sense should prevail. But common sense is an expensive commodity in Africa, especially to those leaders who have stayed in power for far too long. I thought that a lot of African countries would learn from Robert Mugabe's demise, from the disgraceful fall of Robert Mugabe, because politics does not start and end with winning elections. There are several other undesired consequences of transfer of power, other undesired consequences of politics. So it's not always the case that it's only Bobby Wine and his followers who are fed up with Yoweri Museveni. His followers also, his inner cycle also, and they are simply waiting for a certain precarious chance to happen, as was the case in November 2017. So when you have a leader who exhausts all democratic channels of relinquishing power, it also breeds a fertile ground for a coup. And this is like what is likely going to take place in Uganda. Yoweri Museveni has chosen a path of military insurgents. He has chosen a path where the military there is likely to unite with the other popular opposition figures like Robert Kagiagyali, that is Bobby Wine. And we are going to see a repeated Zimbabwe, a repeated Sudan, and several other coups that took place in Africa in 2020. It's a sad episode of democracy in Uganda in general, and the African Union in particular, which also espouse certain democratic tenets, but which hardly come by, because at the end of the day, you have a lot of observer missions stampeding on endorsing a sham election, which is actually uncalled for and unfortunate.
Right. Right. Thank you so much for joining us. We're coming to you live from Zimbabwe Daily. Today, we've been facing a little bit of challenge with electricity and therefore affecting our broadcast. But all the same, we hope you can hear us well, Terence. I hope our audio is suited. Mr. Shambari, thank you so much. Warusero, you raised a number of pertinent issues to do with you having an election that actually does not produce the will of the people, having an election on the backdrop of violence. We saw 54 people dying one day in November. That's the exact same now that we saw here in Zimbabwe. We really raise the importance of Africa learning from the mistakes of others, especially of the late revolutionary Robert Mugabe. Now, we come to you, Mr. Shambare. From your own observations of happenings in Uganda, what would you say is the most fundamental lesson that Africa should learn?
Thank you, Yvonne. Notwithstanding the fact that our broadcast is intermittently cutting, but one thing to ask is whether the African dictators have got any capacity to learn. They are a group, a class of intransigent individuals who are very self-seeking, who are bent not to learn anything. You may want to know that this morning I just decided to visit my library and picked up this little handbook from Kwame Nkrumah, who was actually talking about the crisis in African leadership, where he was saying there's a tragedy in that the war of nationalist liberation is going to be consumed by the imperialists overnight when they then replace nationalist governments with their puppets, their election agents, and their own systems. What they're just going to do is just remove the faces of the white persons that are there and keep the system intact. Why am I saying this? Like Dr. Rusero aptly captures it. If you go back to history, you find that Patrice Lumumba was a beacon of true liberation and true heroism, true nationalism, and true Pan-Africanism. But what happened to him? We had Moise Chombe coming in to champion the interests of little Belgium. You move on, you go to Malawi, we had Camus Banda. You move on, you go to Sudan before the one that we know, there was Nimeri. You know, you go to Arab Moi, you come to Robert Mugabe that he was talking about. Even today, you go to Yoweri Museveni. These people have got an entitlement of saying simply because they fought some bush wars, like in Uganda, he was assisted by Tanzania, by Nyerere then, and you come to Zimbabwe, they think they've got an entitlement because they were lucky to be born before Dr. Rusero and myself were there, and some of them were even cowards. And because of this entitlement, they feel that the new generation of Julius Malema, the new generation of Nelson Chamisa, the new generation of Bobby Wine, and the new generation of Thomas Sankara, you will be shocked to know that these are the same groups of people that were actually responsible for the murder of people, new revolutionaries like Thomas Sankara. Now, you ask me to say, what do I say about the election in Uganda? I don't take it as an election. An election is not what happens on that particular day. If you look at what has happened over the past 2 or 3 years in Uganda, you get an old man, an oligarch, an octogenarian who goes on and shamelessly to change the date of his birth. What does his mother think and his father think? When you have your own child having to change their own birth certificate, their date of birth, you go further, you look at the violence that Dr. Rusero, ably highlighted, where we had Bob Wine, running away from live bullets. We also the videos on the African continent everywhere. The same thing we saw it with Chamisa in Zimbabwe. It was happening. And not only that, like what Dr. Rusero said, you then get people like Cyril Ramaphosa, they keep quiet. You then get people like the, Kenyan president, rushing to congratulate. What are they congratulating? You are congratulating such kind of fraud, such kind of murderous arrangements, such kind of sodomization of people's democracy, people's choice. That is not good for us, for Africa. For me, in Uganda, it's just a replay of the old tape that we have known, which unfortunately is being peddled by the American imperialism. I was doing some little bits of research. You'll be shocked to know that the United States last year alone pumped in $970 million to Museveni, which means Museveni, no one is going to ask him because he is now peddling American interests. I don't know whether that is the Trump or is the American policy as it is. I don't know. The British have stopped criticizing him, and I don't know how much they are involved and how much they are not involved. So Africa, like I'm saying, I think it's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy indeed. You actually raise an important question an important point that I want to bring to ourselves to say, who is going to stand with the Africans when these so-called neo-imperialists or whatever they are called now are the ones who are funding dictatorship, who benefits from confusion in Africa? Dr. Hussein.
Yeah, I think you have to understand the context of Museveni in terms of his background, his ascendance to power. He is not a liberation fighter as he would want to portray. He also has his own tragic history of being a puppet to deal with. That's why he does not have any moral claim to label Bobby Wine a puppet, because Museveni actually is the archbishop of puppets in Africa. I think he is the longest puppet in power. If we are to locate the puppet who have overstayed in power, Museveni is also, if you go to America, they call him the Bismarck of Africa. Just ask yourself why. If you look at the history of the DRC war and how the likes of Museveni were also complicit, working side by side with imperialists, neo-colonialists, they will tell you that Museveni is actually, it will tell you that Museveni is actually the point man of America and Britain, probably in the whole East African region there. That's why he knows that he can easily get away with it. Look at the lax you've won. Look at the latent statements that have been given. And he also gives leverage to other dictators and authoritarians like the one we have in Zimbabwe. If in Zimbabwe they killed 6 people and we have someone who killed 50 people overnight, they will actually give him, they will actually give us leverage to say at least we are better. You look at how shambolic Ugandan elections were. They were even worse than what was overturned by the Supreme Court in Malawi. We last saw that kind of a sham election, I think, in a while. But here we are, we already have Museveni in power for the next 6 years again. It's tragic. I liked it when Brother Shambare made reference to Kwame Nkrumah. You know, the current crop of political elite that we have, you feel this sense of betrayal of the founding values of Africa, the vision that the founding fathers had when they convened to Organization of African Unity, versus what is happening right now. Some of the people, bulk of what we have in Africa, Yvonne, these are a comprador element. That's why they resolve well. They are a comprador element. They are appointments of neo-colonialists who are now in power. These are petite bourgeoisie. They are so detached from the people. Right now, people are dying of COVID. They don't even lift a finger. And I can bet you that they've already vaccinated themselves. They already have those vaccinations in their overcoats, in their wardrobes at home. They don't care because they are kleptocrats. Kleptocrats can rule without the people. But back to Uganda, you asked a pertinent question to say, who then is going to rescue Uganda? I think...
Dr.
Yes. Go ahead.
I think we're having a bit of a... Dr. Lisero, we can hardly hear you now.
Yeah, so I was saying, I think you can now hear me.
Yes.
I was saying the greatest question of the day will be addressed by the African man himself in the street. There is need to galvanize the masses, the national consciousness in nation states. Otherwise, thinking that the Europeans, the Americans are going to be our saviors, hashtagging them, I don't think that is going to work. There is a lot that needs to be done in terms of re-galvanizing consciousness amongst the people, that they are their own liberators. But it's a paradox, because each time there is an oppressive regime in Africa, there is also a significant percentage of the population that also benefits, who also see angels and a God where there is none. So if we are to come to Zimbabwe, for example, it's a fact that ZANU also commands its own following of people who like that party, who love that party. This is the same case with Uganda. That's the same case even if you go to Kenya, etc. So I think the younger generation has a role to play, but that role can only occur if there is some consciousness fostered amongst the youth. The youth of today is also detached from the political happenings of the day, which leaves a gap now between the octogenarian rulers and the blindfolded masses at the bottom. We need a bulwark, a bastion of youth, of young people, of young populace who then can stand up and rise for what is right as opposed to what is wrong.
Right, right. Indeed, we need a bastion of our young people who can stand up to what is right. Thank you so much, Zimbabwe. You're coming to us live. We're on Zimbabwe Daily. And what we are doing is we're just doing a post-mortem of the election in Uganda. And we want to know what happened there. We want to establish what our problem is as Africa. Are the elections the route that Africans need to take, or we need to pursue another direction in order for us to experience change in Africa? I have got my two guests, Dr. Alex Lucero, and he's a political analyst, and I also have Mr. Joame David Shambare, who is a business and consultant. So we want to establish where we are going as Africa. And I think I like how you able to comment, you say, hey, you is useless. Okay, I'm getting a little bit of background noise. Let me try to. Okay, so we want to establish where the problem is. Calvin Jirebo, you asked this question. You say actually, AU is useless. Why do they let Bobby Wine being under house arrest? What's the problem with him? These revolutionary parties um, must stop election rigging. And this is a very fundamental issue. We need to stop election rigging in Africa. But where are the regional bodies? And I'm asking Dr. Rosero, where are the regional bodies? And are these regional bodies able to defend or even to fight for the fundamental rights and expectations of the people?
They are, but unfortunately, the way our regional organizations are modeled, it's quite different from how, for example, the European Union is modeled. Our regional bodies cannot do better than the states that constitute them, than the members that constitute them. They are just an extension of the states. The states have not ceded their sovereignty to the overall regional bodies. We are found at Africa Union level as the regional economic communities, RECs. So they are just political formations, political alliances. They cannot stand and call to order a member state because they are an extension of those governments. The governments in Africa have not ceded their sovereignty to have an overseership role of a regional organization that can flex muscle. That's why the likes of Mugabe even threatened to pull from SADC. That's why the likes of Mugabe even declared that Zimbabwe would intervene in the DRC or even without the blessing of SADC. You know the dynamics in Southern Africa where Mugabe was chairperson of the organ, and Mandela was the chairperson of SADC. And Mugabe actually being the last serving chairperson of the frontline states. He saw himself as the spokesperson of Southern Africa in general and Africa at large. And he went on to unilaterally declare the intervention in DRC, later on sided by Angola and Namibia. So the regional organizations are out of question. They need to be remodeled. They need to be reconstituted. For as long as we have regional organizations that do not have power to call states into order, then there is nothing. And if you also look at the source of funding of those regional organizations, you look at SADC, for example. I constantly make reference to SADC. That's where we are, despite that Uganda is not in SADC. 60% of SADC is budgetary funding, is externally granted. So there is no way we can claim autonomy of regional bodies which cannot even self-sustain themselves, which cannot even fund themselves. So that's a tragedy. We need to remodel our regional and international organization to the levels where ECOWAS can call Uganda to order, to the levels where SADC can call Zimbabwe to order. But this is not what is taking place, because presidentialism takes precedence in Africa. We have a big man syndrome. The states are a mere extension of the property of the leaders, where us as the subjects, we are even counted as property to say, I have got my gold mines, I have my shops, my malls, and of course I have my people in my country that I preside over. We have a neo-patrimonial version which does not fit well in terms of regional organizational politics, where a regional organization can call a state to order.
Right. Mr. Shambari, what's your own take?
Me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear you.
I think as countries, for example, as nations, design of our constitutions, I would want to suggest that perhaps include in our constitutions a clause that removes sitting incumbents from office at least 3 months before the proper next election. We then put into place arrangements when some other individuals who are not appointed by the incumbents in office to be responsible for our state affairs. That then assists us in the machinery. For example, if you are in Zimbabwe, in mobilizing the machinery of the Charles Charambas, the machinery of the ZEG, the machinery of some of those people that are already partisan, so that we do away with the issue of state conflation. For example,
Are we talking
in
about
Uganda.
Is it George?
Hello?
You said Charles Charamba. Is it Charles or is it George?
Thank you, George Charamba. Thank you for that correction.
Okay.
I'm saying, for example, if you go to Uganda, I do not even know at what stage Museveni ceased to be a president of Uganda. I do not even see at what stage Emerson Mnangagwa ceased to be the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. So if it is included in the elections that these people actually resign or are removed from office at least 3 months before the next general election, an interim authority that comprises all the interested parties then go into office and manages the elections, including, if necessary, even the appointments of those key elements or pillars that are going to be involved in any election in any particular country that can assist us. It may also include, it's abstract. What I'm suggesting is abstract. It may also temporarily include removal of certain army officers, police officers, intelligence officers. We mothball them for a certain time. If it means calling in on a few retired, on external ones who will come with a very, very balanced view. Of course, they will be biased. There's no one who is absolutely not biased. But this will then allow us a chance to eliminate what we saw in Uganda, where Museveni, as the commander of the Ugandan Defense Forces, was giving direct instructions on what is to be done. Where we saw in Zimbabwe in 2008, Robert Mugabe when he was commanding the short sleeves exercise against the MDC and others. This could have been averted. You asked the question about what we should do about regional bodies. In my view, the regional bodies as well is something that must again go into our national constitutions, that we must put a mechanism within our national constitutions that allows the citizens to second who should go to represent countries at the regional levels. The president may be there by virtue of the fact that he is the head of state, but the constitutions must put in mechanisms that then allow other actors who will not be partisan. Like if Mnangagwa is going to SADC, it's him and his ZANU-PF entourage. If then is going to AU, it's him and his entourage. Whoever goes there, the benevolence of the head of state. You then ask the question to say, which way Africa? I believe that democracy and the nationalism in Africa is totally decomposed. It cannot continue to be championed by people whose ideology is decomposed. They are pseudo-nationalists, these people. They are no longer liberators. They lost that card, that tag, many, many years ago. And regrettably and unfortunately, the young generations have to fight another war. They have to do another template, pick other guns. I may be sounding very radical and very militaristic, but this is what it has to be. For example, what does it take for Bobby Wine to deal with Museveni? What else? If he goes to court, it's Museveni's court. You come to Zimbabwe, if it's Chamisa, if he goes to court, it's Mnangagwa's court. So I was looking at the population of Uganda. The youth population is over 7 million. These people need to be sufficiently radicalized. It means a number of more lives have to die. I'm sorry to be saying this, but I know that there is nothing good that comes without shedding blood. Patinozoenda kuchipatara chiti makorokoto mudzimai anenge aona nhamu nekubuda ropa. There's nothing that will come without, without shedding blood. We have to threaten the status quo of these current dictators. As long as their status quo is not threatened, they will continue to sodomize us. They will continue to eat on our behalf. They will continue to munch prawns on our behalf. They will continue to fly to AU, spending useless time and our monies, take our sisters there and ruin our countries. This question of saying what should we do? Lastly, we have to stand up and face the imperialists. For example, if you look at France, one of the worst colonialist policies in Africa, there are very few countries that are former colonies of France that have enjoyed peace. They will make sure that any former French colony does not enjoy peace. You go to DRC, one would want to think that France was a former colonizer of DRC, yet it was not. DRC was colonized by Belgium, but look at what France has done. They've gone in to change their language, they've gone in to change their currency. Look at what they are doing in Central Africa. Look at what they've done.
All right.
So I was just going to end by saying you've won that.
I think we're not getting.
Hello.
Hello, yes, we are missing you a bit. There seem to be internet lag there. Yes, you can come again. You said it seems.
You're also getting cut.
Okay, we can hear you now. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Yvonne. I was saying, in view of the imperialist policies that are being administered on Africa by China, by Russia, by United States, by UK, I'm made to think that one of the motivators for the United Kingdom to exit EU was the fact that they want to rebuild their colonial empire. They want to restart getting resources from Zimbabwe, resources from Zambia and other countries. They're afraid of what China is doing as well. China also is not a good colonialist as much. So we may need to fight. The future generations may need to fight another war of liberation. Otherwise, in the absence of that, I'm not seeing a quick reply. I mean, a quick relief for Zimbabwe. I'm not seeing a quick relief for Uganda. I'm not seeing a quick relief for even Sudan.
We're
I'm
going
not
to
seeing
take a short break right now. Sorry, Mr. Let's take a short break. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, hopefully our net will be better. Let's go on a short break. Rita? Right, so we are back again in the studio, and we are talking to Dr. Rusero and Mr. Shambare, and we're just looking at the happenings in Uganda. So we're trying to make sure that our network works, and so that we can reach out to you more. Now, you mentioned an issue that even if Bobby Wine goes the court route, the courts are captured, and he has gone to court. What do we expect to come out of the court, Dr. Say?
For as long as there is no separation of power, for as long as there are weak institutions, for as long as Museveni is a quasi-god in Uganda, it's very unfortunate in as much as the electoral outcome predictions of that court are concerned. But it has to be done. Malpractices have to be exposed. History has to be made, and all channels must be exposed, must be exhausted for posterity purposes. So, in terms of Uganda, it's very unfortunate. We have never seen a paradox where the puppet happens to be the incumbent leader in power. You know, we are used to rhetoric of a puppet being the opposition, being funded by the Western interests, also aspiring to take power so as to fulfill the aspirations of the Western interests. Now, in the case of Uganda, you have a puppet right in State House. And how do you now then deal with a puppet? I think the fight of confronting a puppet has to be taken to the puppeteers. There's also a great deal of confronting the puppeteers more than the puppet himself, because outside the puppeteer, the puppets amount to nothing. So it's not all hope lost in Uganda or in Africa. We have seen wonders how democracy works for as long as there are strong institutions. You know, in South Africa, it's still good to see a president, a former president, being dragged before the courts, being dragged before a commission of inquiry. Those are signals, indicators of capabilities of Africa and Africans to solve their own matters. We have seen it in Malawi. We have seen a whole presidential race being reversed, and the court ruling against the incumbent's favor. And we have seen peaceful transfer of power in that respect. So we have a delicate balance of rogue regimes, rogue states, vis-a-vis states that are aspiring to become democracies. It's not all lost. I think what is needed is more pressure. You do not have to wait for an election to trigger that mode, to trigger that mood where we pressure incumbents to change, where we pressure incumbents to reform. That's where we are also losing it as Zimbabwe. We are waiting for 2023 to happen to start the discourses of elections, to start the discourses of leveling the playing field, to start the discourses of reforming the partisan and brazen, blatant ZBC. It has to start now if we are serious in terms of having an electoral outcome that reflects the people. But you see this tiredness in the MDC alliance. You see this tiredness in opposition. You also see this detachment with the civil society. You know the difference between our political climate and the one we had in 1999. It's the definition and location of the national question that was confronting Zimbabwe at that time. Right now, the MDC alliance, I make reference to the MDC alliance because it is the leading opposition voice in Zimbabwe. It is the greatest alternative that we have right now. Forget about all other those Mickey Mouse political parties. But there is this subtle tiredness. You don't see this energy you've won in terms of galvanizing the mojo. The Morgan Tsvangirai-led MDC was very clear. It was a three-legged pot. You had the civil society, you had the labor, you had the political party. If you go to the MDC alliance right now, they also have a crisis of elite capture. You have some nose brigades now occupying higher offices, some smart people, lawyers wearing suits. You don't see the grassroots, ya 99 in that opposition. So that kind of detachment is also costly. Now you go to Uganda. Bobby Wine has got the following of the youths. But outside the youth, he has not also galvanized his support to coalesce Museveni, to isolate Museveni from all the gravitas. You talk of even penetrating in the levels of state, the military, the security, the church, the civil society. Youth alone, they are not enough, they are not sufficient to orchestrate power. Urban support alone is not enough. That's the current predicament which we also find in Zimbabwe, where the opposition is slowly becoming a caricature of what it purports to replace. The opposition is slowly becoming some minor mini ZANU-PF elite, so that when ZANU-PF coughs, it's the MDC that first catches the cold. When there is factionalism in ZANU, opposition follows suit and also do some form of their mini factionalism, regionalisms. The isms are just too much. We need to retrace back because we have to correspond what is happening in Zimbabwe, in Uganda, and nuance it to our own situation so that we also help ourselves from these situations. We need to trace back our path to 1999. We started well. We have to ask, where then did we go wrong? We went wrong by detaching ourselves from the people, by becoming an elitist party that is detached from the grassroots, that thinks the labor is no longer necessary, that thinks it's only some SRC young men and women, some youth who can do it. We need more a wholesome package of how best we can confront the dictator outside the hashtags, outside Twitter and Facebook, and outside the myopic view that one day or the other some salvation of foreigners will come and redeem Zimbabwe.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Rusero. Indeed, we need to find a bit of redemption after all that we continue to face on a daily basis, and especially our democracy that is on trial. Now we've heard this information. Let me just mute you. Let me just mute you there, okay? So we've heard yesterday in Uganda, the lawyers to Bobby Wine took a habeas corpus case to the courts, but two judges declined to take on those cases. We also saw some conspiracies going around in that country since there was electricity water supply has been shut down to Bobby Wine's place. We also know that internet is shut down in that country as well. But news that are circulating state that Museveni wants to resign and leave his son, who is the General Mohonzi, in power, and there was news that Museveni had actually left Uganda to South Sudan. I don't know, Dr. Rusero, Mr. Shambare, what you have picked from what is going. Is this something that is feasible that Museveni would, a few days after he's inaugurated, leave Uganda and with the hope of leaving power on his son?
Can I come in, Ivo? Hello? Can you hear me?
Mr. Shambare?
You see what? There is no other degree of political sodomization of a nation that can
Yes,
surpass that kind of.
I can hear you. Yes.
The people of Uganda, assuming that they voted from 7, of which I know they didn't. They did not vote for his son. It's not Azizwe Muri. I couldn't get a better English word to put it. Azizwe Muri. And Museveni, why would you contest an election, win it, if he did, of which I am still convinced that he didn't, and then leave for his young son? Which means he's acknowledging that the youth must do it. So for me, these are decoys from the intelligence. The other time during the elections, we had away from the country. I do not even want to invest my time on whether Museveni is handing over to his son or is handing over to his girlfriend or is doing the above. My issue goes to the judicial issue. The judges that have recused themselves from handling this matter, I want to salute them because they know what is happening behind the scenes. They know to what level the judiciary has been captured in the Ugandan judiciary system. I don't think that we are going to have many of those kind of judges like what we saw in Malawi. And I wish there could be a few judges in Uganda that can have the temerity to actually come up and handle those issues and actually save the people of Uganda. Like I was saying, I was going through the statistics of the voters in Uganda. You'll be shocked to know that they had 18,103,503 registered voters. Out of those 18 million, 10,359,479 voted, which means 7.8 million people did not vote. And if you look at the statistics, urban population in Uganda is 10.784. And if you look at how the elections were managed in Uganda, where we go to about 10 o'clock or so with some portions without having received the voting equipment and others, it can tell you that the urban population where Bobby Wine is very strong, were in one way or the other prevented from voting. We saw it in Zimbabwe in 2008 and 2013. And then, in my view, I still come back to the point. I will not be detracted by these rumors of Museveni leaving or not leaving. I will not be. We saw it in Zimbabwe. November 17, there were rumors of saying Morgan Tsvangirai is going to be vice president, is going to be prime minister, so and so is willing to leave, but none of those things did happen. These are things, in my view, that are manufactured by the military intelligence in order to manage people's emotions. What we must be doing is to focus on the issues in Uganda, that there was Uganda where he was assisted by the army, and that was a military coup. AU must be seized with an issue of squash the violence in Uganda, must move forward. The African Union, the UN, SADC, and any other person must go in and say there were no elections. They must call for a new, free, and fair elections in Uganda. Everybody accepts that there were no elections in Uganda. You can't say we had elections. We saw Bobby Wine being chased away by the army, being shot at. Now he's under house arrest. I think the best thing we can do is, as a country, as a world, as a globe, is to accept that what happened in Uganda should not be allowed. Bobby Wine must not even be forced to continue going into the arms in the hands and in the mouth of the gladiators to say he's going to court. What are we afraid of? We in Zimbabwe is the black consciousness. We must say an injury to one is an injury to all. In Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in Zambia, we must start calling for fresh elections in Uganda that must be done under UN, under a free and a fair, non-partisan authority. This is my view.
Right. We should start calling. I mean, who listens to us? I mean, Zimbabwe is not done very well on its own. Now, Dr. Rusero, do we see a similarity between 2008 Zimbabwe with 2021 Uganda? We've seen lots of violence happening in Uganda. We've also seen a lot of opposition leaders arrested. Now, Bobby Wine himself is under house arrest, as it were. They've run out of food, and he's stuck in that house with his wife and a relative's child. Now, do we see a similarity? And would dialogue be the best for Uganda to go? Or
Yeah, I think Yvonne, the dictator's playbook remains one. It's the same. We even saw it even in the citadel of democracy in form of America. What Donald Trump attempted to do. And how he still is undeniable. But thanks to strong institutions in America, which stand for democracy and does not stand for incumbents or for individuals or personalities. That's the contrast. But otherwise, the playbook for dictators, it's the same. It's not only in Zimbabwe or in Uganda. It's across all over. Even if you go to Saudi Arabia, if you go to those Middle Eastern states, they one way or the other also practice these rogue traits of regimes. But in terms of dialogue, I don't believe in dialogue that seeks to re-energize the incumbent. Dialogue in Africa has first been interpreted or perceived as a way of refueling the incumbent. We saw it between 2009 and 2013. Mugabe and ZANU-PF were electorally finished by the MDC. But when SADC came in, they did not come to rescue Zimbabwe. They came to rescue ZANU-PF, which had been electorally finished. ZANU was about to go. ZANU had dismally failed. Mugabe was defeated in an election. Election results were cooked, delayed announcement by a historical 5 weeks delay. So when we are talking about dialogue, why do we need to dialogue in the post-election? Dialoguing about what? Elections is about choosing who governs, when, where, why, and how. So after an election, we need to move forward. Why do we need to always sit down? Why is dialogue a condition for post-electoral post-mortem? The one who is one should preside over a country, introduces or policies and move the country forward. We cannot have this scenario where there are problems, then we limit the conscience of a nation to say it's dialogue which can you. Dialogue is actually a silent way of saying let's accept the status quo or let's co-opt the opposition elite. Sadly, that's what dialogue has been. Why should we dialogue after an election? If I win, so be it. I move on with my policies. After all, those are the policies I sold to the electorate, which in their belief then elected me, voted me in power. So I don't subscribe to dialogue. I also do not subscribe to issues of a coalition governments. Those are elite pacts. which are detached from the grassroots, from the masses, from the people, who in this context matter, Yvonne. We can't have a continued scenario of recycling crisis. Had the issue in Zimbabwe been resolved amicably in 2008, we wouldn't be where we are today, where we have successfully recycled the crisis. We are slowly going back to where we came from. So, no to dialogue in Uganda. It's either re-election or the winner should continue preside over Uganda. God help him if he sustains himself for the next 5 years, which I do not think. Then the whole conspiracy of the Uganda, Museveni attempting to leave power to his son, etc. I don't think those are factual. That those are elements of fake news. The idea is you do not contest power and win and invest so much in shedding blood, killing people, dozens of people, only to flee, only to leave it in the hands of someone. It's actually a conspiracy that is actually also tampering and tinkering with the people's intelligence in Uganda. The truth of the matter is Museveni is either planning to finish this term or is planning to die in office. And when he does, probably that's when we are going to have a scenario where his son might take over, which I don't believe. It's going to be the most precarious, tortuous 5-year term of his tenure as a politician and as a president in Uganda, because things have changed. The terrain has changed. You cannot continue using the same old tricks all the time and win. You cannot continue fooling the people all the time. Museveni, Yvonne, we are going to have another discussion of this matter. He is not going to last in this term. That's definitely not going to happen in as much as our political wisdom is concerned. You look at the footages you are showing. What kind of politics is that? Why should I wear a bulletproof when I'm going to a rally and a helmet?
So the happenings in Uganda really sad, and like you said, Zimbabwe has walked that route before, and definitely dialogue. Who do you go into dialogue with when you are faced with somebody like Yoweri Museveni, hell bent on making sure that they reverse the gains of the people? Now, the question is, what should the people do? Right, we've asked what the politicians should do, and you are just giving us a history to the effect that things have not really worked before. But now we are saying where to. What do the Ugandans do if Museveni remains in power and all these people have been beaten up, have been abused, and stuff like that? What is it that we are going to see, at the end of it all? Where are we going to go where are they going to go as a nation? Where are we going to be as a continent? And how are we going to establish the democratic spaces that we need? Should we go for elections? Can African countries really get to a point where an election brings out the outcome that people expect? I mean, those are the questions that continue to make rounds in our communities. Thank you so much to my guests, Dr. Rusero. Thank you so much to Mr. Shambare for joining me today. Thank you so much to all of you who were patient enough and who joined us from all over the country.
All right, so electricity decided to play a hard one and the first one on me again. But all the same, thank you so much, Zimbabwe, for joining me. To our guest, thank you so much, Dr. Rusero. Thank you so much, Mr. Shambari.
Thank you, Yvonne. I think this is a good discussion. It's heartening that someone like you devotes time to talk about Uganda because this is a good precedence of what is going to happen in Zimbabwe. It's a serious discussion which should continue. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Mr. Shambare, thank you so much, sir.
Yvonne, thank, thank, thank you very much, Yvonne. I will certainly take the comments from Dr. Rusero concerning the MDC that I didn't comment on. They are sound, they are advisory, and they are key. And we actually need to create a think tank, my brother, where we can actually feed from other angles as far as that. And I also want to just say that I salute Bob Wine and I salute the people of Uganda. I know they are revolutionaries, and I know victory is certain. Thank you very much.
Okay. Tinothenda, thank you so much, my fathers, for joining me on the platform. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day and stay safe. COVID is out here and is out to get us.
This is why I'm at home.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Joshua. Awesome. Thank you so much, Zimbabwe. Thank you so much, Zimbabwe, for joining me today on Zimbabwe Daily. We definitely hope that we will be able to bring you more of these conversations around the happenings in Uganda. We continue to follow proceedings happening there. Thank you so much to everybody who's been a part of this stream. Unfortunately, electricity has been bungling up on me today. I hope, though, that the conversation could all hear what was going on. So thank you so much, Zimbabwe, for joining me. My name is Yvonne Muchaka, and the plea is the same. Nematambudziko, we've lost. Let me just switch off this light. Okay. Thank you so much. I just had to switch off the lights because the electricity keeps going and coming back. I'm not too sure what the problem actually is, but all the same, we need to keep ourselves safe. I wanted to say nematambudziko, Mr. SB Moyo, nematambudziko, apiwa idzuda, nematambudziko. There have just been a lot of fatalities, and mostly due to COVID-19 and nematambudziko to the Mashaya Mumbe clan. We lost Chief Mashaya Mumbe. I'm also a Mashaya Mumbe, so that's my uncle there. So thank you so much for keeping yourselves safe, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we are all safe and we are all protected. Zimbabwe, we only have one country. Let us continue praying for the Ugandans so that they don't take the route which will not be helpful. Africa is better when it is working, and it will be better for all of us when it is working. So we continue to follow proceedings in Uganda. Is Museveni planning to leave his son in power? That is a question where we continue to observe. The judges recusing themselves from Bobby Wine's Hobbes Corpus case. We continue to follow how his case is going to be. Are they going to allow him to come out of a house arrest? Are they going to give him food? Because if he doesn't have anything to eat, they're simply putting him under, starvation or something. So our prayers are with Bobby Wine and his wife Barbara as they are under house arrest. Now, how long how long do the people have to be patient when killings and kidnappings are happening? Mr. Shambare came through and said there is need for a revolution in order to change the way Africa is. The way Africa runs its own systems. Will elections ever reform anything? This is a question that we continue to ask on a daily basis. I think that also explains the kind of apathy we find whenever an election is called for, because the question is, are we going to see a different outcome? So if there is need to make sure that the electoral reform agenda begins to be talked about right now, because unless it is dealt with, then we continue to face problems. Are our courts captured? Is the court route the best route to take for any African nation? We saw Malawi doing it. Can Uganda do it also? Thank you so much, Zimbabwe. We hope that the next time we'll be able to get on other guests so that we can have more conversation around the happenings in Uganda. Thank you so much to all of you who participated. May the good Lord bless you. Mask up, stay safe, sanitize, maintain social distance, stay at home, but stay alive. Have a wonderful rest of day. I am out.